My name is John, and I'm 80 years old. Over the decades, I've learned that being kind doesn't always guarantee kindness in return. Have you ever gone out of your way to be helpful or compassionate, only to be ignored, taken for granted, or even disrespected? It's a strange and painful feeling, isn't it? But it's more common than you think. What if I told you that kindness itself isn't the problem, but how we give it, when we give it, and to whom we give it? That's where the lesson lies. Stay with me, because today, I'm sharing a perspective that could completely change how you approach kindness and how you protect your self-respect while remaining compassionate. Together, we'll explore how Stoic wisdom can help you give without being taken advantage of. I remember a time when I believed that kindness could solve almost anything. Be helpful, be understanding, and people would naturally treat you with respect. But life taught me otherwise. I've seen good, compassionate people taken advantage of, friends who bent over backwards to help others, only to be met with ingratitude and entitlement. I've watched kind hearts be pushed to the brink of emotional exhaustion. Maybe you've experienced this too. You give and give and give, but instead of being appreciated, you're overlooked, or worse, treated as if your kindness is an obligation. It can leave you questioning whether kindness is worth it at all. But here's the truth. Kindness is powerful. It's not the kindness that's the problem. It's how we choose to give it, how we set boundaries, and whether we understand its purpose. Stoic philosophers understood this well. Marcus Aurelius often reflected on the importance of being kind, but not at the expense of our self-respect. Today, we'll dive deeper into why kindness can sometimes lead to disrespect, and how understanding this dynamic can help you navigate life with grace, strength, and wisdom. There's a story I remember vividly about a woman named Emily. She was the kind of person who never said no. If someone needed help moving, she was there. If a coworker needed extra support on a project, she'd stay late. She'd offer a listening ear, even when she was exhausted herself. At first, people admired her for it. But over time, something strange happened. Her kindness wasn't appreciated, it was expected. And when she finally needed help, no one was there for her. This happens more often than we think, and here's why. When kindness is given without boundaries, people start to see it as a given, not a gift. It becomes something they feel entitled to, rather than something they value. Stoic philosophers, particularly Epictetus, understood the danger of placing too much of our worth in how others respond to our kindness. He said, "Don't expect others to behave as you would. Focus on what is within your control." When we give kindness hoping for recognition or respect, we put ourselves at the mercy of others' reactions. And when those reactions don't meet our expectations, we're left feeling drained, hurt, or even resentful. Kindness, when misunderstood, can lead people to view you as someone who can be taken advantage of. They mistake your compassion for weakness and your generosity for lack of self-worth. But here's the truth. Kindness isn't weakness. It's only misunderstood when we fail to communicate its value through boundaries. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." Being kind doesn't mean being passive. It means knowing when to say yes and when to say no. That's the difference between kindness that's valued and kindness that's exploited. Have you ever found yourself saying yes to something you didn't really want to do, just to avoid disappointing someone? Maybe it was covering an extra shift at work, lending money to a friend who didn't appreciate it, or constantly putting others' needs ahead of your own. At first, it feels good to be the reliable one, the one people can count on. But slowly, that sense of pride turns into something else: exhaustion. I once knew a man named Mark. He was a kind soul, but his kindness often came at a cost. He couldn't say no, not because he didn't want to, but because he feared being seen as selfish or unhelpful. And the more he gave, the more people took. Eventually, Mark burned out. His health deteriorated, his relationships became strained, and he felt trapped by the very kindness that once gave him joy. Seneca, one of the great Stoic thinkers, warned against the danger of trying to please everyone. He said, "You will never please all men. Do what your nature demands of you." You see, when we try to make everyone happy, we spread ourselves too thin. And when we give to the point of depletion, kindness becomes a burden instead of a virtue. There's an important lesson here. Kindness without boundaries isn't sustainable. When you prioritize others' needs at the expense of your own well-being, you lose balance. The Stoics believed that balance was essential to living a good life. They taught that while compassion is important, it must be tempered by wisdom. Wisdom to know when your kindness is lifting others and when it's weighing you down. Mark eventually learned this the hard way. After his burnout, he began setting small boundaries. He started saying no when he needed to, without guilt. And do you know what happened? People respected him more. Kindness doesn't mean giving everything away. It means giving what you can, without losing yourself in the process. Boundaries aren't walls meant to shut people out. They're bridges that ensure our kindness is respected, not taken for granted. I remember a woman named Sarah. She was known for her generosity, always lending a hand, giving advice, and offering support. But there was one difference between Sarah and people like Mark or Emily. Sarah knew when to stop. When someone crossed a line or began to take advantage of her, she didn't hesitate to speak up. If she felt overwhelmed, she wasn't afraid to say no. And because of that, people respected her kindness. They didn't view her as someone to be used. They saw her as someone who gave out of strength, not obligation. Here's what we can learn from her. Kindness with boundaries doesn't diminish the act. It elevates it. It makes your generosity more meaningful because it comes from a place of choice, not guilt or fear. The Stoics understood this concept well. Epictetus said, "He who is free is he who lives as he wishes, who is neither compelled nor hindered nor limited." When you establish boundaries, you reclaim your freedom. You can give with an open heart because you're not giving to seek approval. You're giving because it aligns with your values. Imagine trying to fill a cup for others when your own is empty. It doesn't work. Boundaries ensure that your cup stays full enough to continue giving without resentment or exhaustion. Sarah's boundaries didn't make her less kind. They made her more effective. When she said yes, she meant it. And when she said no, she didn't apologize. She understood that saying no wasn't an act of cruelty. It was an act of self-respect. So the next time you hesitate to set a boundary, remember this. The most sustainable kindness is the kind that's given with strength, not sacrifice. Real kindness, the kind that leaves an impact, doesn't come from seeking validation. It comes from inner strength. I once met a man named Thomas, who was known for his quiet, unwavering kindness. He wasn't loud or flashy about it. He didn't give to be noticed, and he certainly didn't give expecting anything in return. And because of that, some people overlooked him. They assumed his calm demeanor meant he was someone they could push around. But they were wrong. Thomas had a strength they couldn't see, an inner strength built on self-awareness and values. He understood something most people don't. Kindness doesn't require external approval to be meaningful. The Stoics would agree. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." To the Stoics, acts of kindness were an extension of moral integrity, not a tool to win others' favor. Thomas embodied that perfectly. One day, a colleague tried to take advantage of his kindness by dumping extra work on him, assuming he wouldn't say no. But Thomas politely declined, without anger, without guilt. When asked why, he simply said, "Kindness is something I give, not something to be taken from me." That line stayed with me. You see, when your kindness comes from a place of inner strength, it's steady. It doesn't crumble under pressure, and it doesn't depend on how others react. Whether your kindness is appreciated or not, you continue to act according to your values. The Stoics believe that external events are beyond our control, but how we respond is entirely within our power. So if someone disrespects your kindness, the solution isn't to stop being kind. It's to stand firm in who you are. Because true kindness isn't passive. It's powerful. It's an act of strength, not submission. There's a moment in life when you realize that being kind doesn't mean being everything to everyone. It means knowing your worth, recognizing that your time, energy, and compassion are valuable and should be given wisely. One of the greatest lessons I've learned is that kindness and self-worth go hand in hand. If you give out of guilt or fear of rejection, you're not truly giving, you're sacrificing. But when you give because it aligns with your values and self-respect, your kindness becomes something far more powerful. I remember a friend named Jack who struggled for years to find that balance. He was a natural giver, always putting others before himself. But he reached a point where he felt drained. His kindness had become a weight, and it wasn't lifting others anymore. It was pulling him down. One evening, after a long talk, I asked him, "When was the last time you did something kind for yourself?" He was silent. That silence said everything. Jack had spent so much time focusing on others that he'd forgotten to nurture himself. But once he realized that, everything changed. He started small, taking time to rest, saying no without guilt, and appreciating the things he had accomplished. And do you know what happened? His relationships improved. People didn't respect him less for setting boundaries. They respected him more. The Stoics believed that kindness should be a reflection of self-mastery. Seneca wrote, "Be your own master, and you will no longer be a slave to the opinions of others." When you strike the right balance between giving and self-worth, you experience what the Stoics called eudaimonia, a state of flourishing where kindness lifts both you and those around you. It's not about giving less, it's about giving better. It's about knowing when your kindness is creating value and when it's draining you. Jack learned that lesson, and so can we. Because when you respect yourself, your kindness becomes a strength, not a sacrifice. As I sit here reflecting on the lessons life has taught me, one truth stands out. Kindness is a gift, but only when it's given with wisdom. Throughout my life, I've seen kindness lift people up, and I've seen it tear people down. But what I've learned is that the difference doesn't lie in kindness itself. It lies in the boundaries we set, the intentions behind our actions, and the strength we draw from within. The Stoics believed that kindness isn't just about others, it's about you. It's about living in accordance with your values, offering compassion without losing your identity, and choosing to give from a place of strength. So the next time you feel drained or unappreciated, ask yourself, is my kindness lifting me or is it weighing me down? Because kindness should never be a burden. It should be a reflection of who you are and what you stand for. And when given with the right balance, it has the power to change not only others, but you as well. Have you ever felt like your kindness was taken for granted, or found yourself giving more than you could handle? I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. If this message resonated with you, consider sharing it with someone who might need a reminder to set boundaries and protect their self-worth. And if you'd like more stories and reflections rooted in timeless wisdom, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, John the Stoic. Together, let's continue learning, growing, and giving, but always with strength.